we are live. Welcome, Alexander and Linda from Data Masterminds to the very first Fabric February 2025 live stream. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. So it's both the first Fabric February live stream and my first live anything. So yay me, I guess.
Live?
So this could go either way.
It
Awesome.
can go many ways, apparently.
Yes.
All right. So, but you have your little like honk thingy in case we do mess up.
Yes,
Perfect.
it's there.
Okay. All right. This is going to be great. How about we start with a little introduction? Alexander, you can go first. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then Linda, and then maybe a few words about Data Masterminds and what you do as well.
Sure. So I'm Alexander. I've been at this for quite a few years. I started working actually back in 1997 with Oracle, and hopefully that is not going to be held against me. It's the one thing that simply does not wash out of my resume, it seems. But I've been doing data and databases for a long time, and I sort of kind of fell into BI stuff about 15 years ago, and I love tech. Tech is the one thing that's been driving me. But I also figured out that, wait a minute, tech is cool, but people are actually cooler. So I spend a lot of my time trying to work with people, because without people, tech doesn't matter. So it's a bit of it has been a bit of a pivotal shift for me, and now I am part of running the analytics side of Data Masterminds.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I come from a very different kind of background. I graduated from studies in business intelligence in 2020 in blazing pandemic. So I've been working for like 4 years now in BI, loving it, really loving helping people with tech and making their work better in any kind of way. But previous to this, I was both in retail and journalism. So journalism was very cool because you get to learn new things every day and you have to always be on top of things. And that is very similar to this area we're in now. So yeah, really happy where I'm at.
Good
So
to hear
the whole
that.
I just want to do a bit of an aside, because the other day I had an interview on the podcast that I'm part of running, Knee Deep in Tech, and we were talking to a couple of people who specialize in crisis management. Really, really interesting conversation. And one of them used to be a police officer, and I used to be a paramedic. And we both kind of realized that how easy, within air quotes, those jobs are, because you know pretty well how things are defined. Nothing what we do in BI and in tech is defined. I mean, if there's 2 days without me learning anything, that definitely means that I'm poolside on vacation, because otherwise every day is a school day.
Very true.
Very true. And now, like, backgrounds in paramedics and on-prem SQL, journalism, and now you're together in Data Masterminds and you do analytics. What kind of cool projects are you working on there?
Oh, wow. So I came into Data Masterminds 2 years ago, almost, well, 2 years and a month ago. And the idea was that I was going to start up the analytics side of Data Masterminds, something that very, very quickly got the nickname of Analytics Masterminds. And I realized pretty quickly that this is way more than I could do on my own. And I thought of who can I bring on, and I brought on Linda, and that was
For
probably
some reason we still don't know.
No, well, I would argue that is probably the single best decision I've made in my professional career, because we've done a lot of damage together. So we do anything from BI you can pretty much think of, but we want to try to do architecture, and we want to not entrench ourselves in a client. There's this saying that if you're not part of the solution, there's good money to be made in prolonging the problem. We don't want to be that partner. We want to be the partner that helps you to get where you are. We have a slogan that says meeting you where you are and then taking you where you need to go. And then pretty much backing out, because we never want to find ourselves in a situation where the client needs us to do their daily work. So that's pretty much where we're at. I realized pretty quickly that I am horrible with trying to run a company or run a part of things, but it turns out that Linda is phenomenal at it instead. So we kind of switched things around a bit.
That's true. And when it comes to projects, we don't have a very specific vertical that we work in. We have clients in all industries and areas, and we find it very interesting and learning, where we learn new things. Educational for us to learn new things, learn what runs that industry, and it all basically comes down to the old saying of follow the money. If you follow the money, you know what that industry is most interested in looking at, BI-wise or data-wise, whatever it is. We start with that most important things. But as Alexander said, we do everything from trying to build their whole technical solution to getting to that end result and getting the end users getting value out of their data. Because if they're not getting value out of it, we're not doing a good job. So we really should do a good job with the big responsibility that we get handling their data.
Cool. And then that kind of let's move into the fabric world, because we have this conference coming up, which is why you're here chatting with me today. Fabric February, February 5th through 7th next year. Go and get your tickets. They are available right now. You're going to be there. What are you going to talk about at Fabric February?
First of all, we are currently sourcing the right snacks to bring, because we know we cannot join this conference as sponsors without snacks. So we have to bring something very traditional Swedish, but also edible for people outside of Sweden.
That's a very small, that's
yes,
going to be hard.
It's tricky, but we'll see what we'll come up with.
So a question. Is Swedish fish actually Swedish, or is that just something they came up with in the US?
I think it is Swedish, but it's not that. I don't think many Swedish people eat it.
Not anymore. So this is taking a very interesting turn. The whole craze of small bits of candy, like gummy candy, that is very Swedish and very Nordic. And the Swedish fish were not salty from the beginning. They were fruity, different fruity flavors. And then someone decided, we're going to do a very, very salty version as well, which tend to leave a lot of bodies in its wake. But I'm all for that. So as Elko asked on the stream, the extreme salty stuff, we might definitely bring that. We are not entirely sure that we will be allowed back. And we need to keep in mind that there are sensitive individuals at Fabric February. And I'm talking to you, Americans, especially Patrick Lemlong. So we'll need to be a bit careful.
Yes, I know Norwegians, we also love all the salty licorice stuff. But just brought Swedish fish back from the US, which is kind of funny that they get it in the US, but maybe not in Sweden. William says bring dime bars. That's probably better for the sensitive stomachs that are not used to it.
And you have to eat them in the right way. Otherwise, you're not a real Swede. You have to eat the softy cover first and then the crunchy bit in the middle.
So there is a right way to eat dime bars. Okay.
Yes.
Noted.
So remember where we started, the whole idea of every day being a school day and everything is educational? I didn't know that.
See? Now you know.
Okay.
And Claudio is saying cinnamon rolls. I guess he has heard about fika.
True.
And considering that Claudio is the undisputed master of bringing sweets and snacks wherever he goes, we shall try to acquiesce.
We have some to live up to. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so snacks, we're all set. You're gonna find something delicious to bring for like those of us who like the salty stuff, and for those who might prefer the sweeter kind. But what about fabric stuff? What cool things are you gonna talk about?
So I can start because it's a bit of a segue into why we're having this conversation. So when Katrina and the others reached out and asked if we want to do a live stream, and they thought, well, they asked, what do you want to talk about? And I drew a blank, and then it hit me. We need to talk about basics. The session that I am doing at Fabric February is one. It's called Dodging DAX. It's about how to avoid writing DAX by doing a proper data model. And that all comes down to basics. It's not harder or easier in many ways in Fabric. So a question for you, Katrina, when was the data modeling toolkit first written by Ralph Kimball? Do you know?
I have no idea. I would say when it was first written. I know they've done it since like the late 80s when they actually wrote the book. I don't know, early 2000s? Or
actually, 1996.
Okay.
That's where the first book came out. 1997 was the Dimensional Modeling Manifesto, also by Ralph Kimball. And we've been doing it the same way since. There have been variations of the theme, but at the end of the day, it's the same way of looking at modeling. We started with entity relationship modeling back in the 70s, and that's a great way to model a transactional database, but it's not a great way to model something that should face users. And it's also not designed for really heavy reporting style queries, which dimensional modeling is. So one of the really huge basic stuff that we see is missing in general is dimensional modeling. And we saw the consequences of that when Power BI came on the stage, right? It's almost a decade since Power BI came out. And that sort of kind of democratized reporting in a way that was difficult to do previously. And I'm sure we've all seen some, let's use the word crazy data models, or very creative ways of... Interesting is a good word, of connecting entities. And you might get an answer. It might even be the right answer, but it's probably not going to be fast, and it's a bit of a mess to maintain. So take that and then multiply it by 200. Because in Fabric, even newbies, if you accept that term, are handed the keys to the kingdom. I tend to say that as soon as you pull the pin, Mr. Godin is no longer your friend. And Fabric is one heck of a grenade. So that's why I think basics is super, super important when you suddenly find yourself in a situation where you can properly hurt yourself, if that is, yeah.
Yeah. So dodging DAX, basically all focusing on the fundamentals.
Yes.
Yes. And how is that for you, Linda, coming in with your background, coming into data modeling? Was it easy for you to kind of understand the data modeling side when you're looking at Power BI Fabric? Or was this something that you kind of had to really sit down and study to learn?
It's a very good question. I'm very thankful that I had good teachers studying in school, because we did learn a lot about both the normalization ER modeling kind of thing and the dimensional modeling and the different purposes. So I felt like I had a head start going in from the start, because there's a bunch of people that actually don't know the difference. And you have to make a very clear distinction when you discuss with people about this, that there's a different purpose and they're built very differently. So thankfully, I had that from the start. I've, of course, had to keep educating me, and I love the books, reading them and going back to them whenever I find myself in a, like, I don't know how to solve this. Just trial and error. But as Alexander is saying, if you get a good data model, dimensional model as the foundation, all the rest will be so much easier, because you can do a lot of things with DAX. You can solve almost any problem, but just because you can doesn't mean you should. It's not the right way of doing things. So getting things right, getting things easy is what Power BI is for. But as you say, Fabric, I studied business intelligence. I did not study any flavor that there is that Fabric offers. So I wouldn't be able to say that I can open it and rely on myself not to do something wrong in there by clicking the wrong button or just starting something that I'm not sure what that entails. And I know that, but a lot of other people coming in kind of fresh don't know what their choices and their things that they are able to do in Fabric actually result in. If it's cost wise, or if it's just something down the line is happening there. There's so many tools in that tool belt that is risky, so to say.
Yep.
No, and I mean, we had a lot of conversations when Azure Data Factory came out, and you were at the forefront of that, Catherine. And one of the big things that Microsoft talked about was the ability to lift and shift SSIS, or integration services, straight into Azure Data Factory as if that was a good thing. And it looks like a good thing on paper because it's minimally, well, you don't need to change anything. You literally just dump it into ADF and it's going to work. And that is not the only thing that it's going to do. It's also going to eat your wallet. And that is not obvious. It's the same thing in Fabric. And suddenly you hand potentially a really, really powerful engine to people who don't know what that means. I am not saying that people shouldn't. I'm not saying that people are dumb. I'm saying that every action has a consequence, and we need to be on top of that and be careful not to let people hurt themselves simply by sheer lack of insight into what potential consequences can have. And
I think, sorry.
Go.
I think there's one topic that has been kind of forgotten about for so many years. People don't really want to address it. It's cumbersome. It feels not techy and it's not fun. But with Fabric, it kind of elevated to 1,000 times more important. And that's the topic of governance. You need to keep track of your shit and what's possible, who can do it, who cannot do it, everything from definitions to possibilities and accesses. You need to keep this in a straight line. And if you don't start out immediately with having good governance and setting this up, do that as soon as possible, because you really, it will bite you in the ass if you don't.
I'm going to channel my inner Martha. She was she should have been here because she would go, data governance! Exclamation mark.
Yes.
And it is super, super important. So how would you say, what are some of your key insights into where to start if you start fresh in Fabric and your focus is on governance? Like, where would you start in a brand new project? How would you guide your clients to setting up a brand new Fabric environment?
That's a wonderful question, and we could probably talk for 2 days about that, because there are so many ways to approach that. But we really take our own motto to heart. We meet you where you are. And what we mean with that is, if we get a blank slate, someone who has zero experience, that's a huge challenge, because suddenly they have a heck of a lot of knobs to turn and try to make work. Or, well, in that case, we're going to need to start somewhere basic. What do you want to do? Let's not care about the how or the stuff behind. What do you want to do? What do you want to see? Oh, you want to see these KPIs. Fine. What do we need to do to give you those KPIs? And then we work backwards from there. And as Linda pointed out, governance is absolutely crucial. And I would argue that I'd rather spend, 25, 30, 50% of the time to make sure that we have governance in place, because it's much easier to implement it as we go, as opposed to try to put the genie back in the bottle afterwards. But then we have the other side of the coin, and that is people, I was about to say like me, old people with preconceptions. And I'm pretty sure that everybody has a preconception. And there's another saying that preconception is the mother of all F-ups. And we go back to ADF. If you think you know how things work, Azure Data Factory will kill you from a financial standpoint. It is the same in Fabric. It's the same essentially in any cloud environment, because it has a different dynamic on how cost is computed and how cost works. But if you just barge in with, oh, I know this stuff, I've been doing this for 30 years, you will hurt yourself. So we're back to meeting you where you are, realizing that you're about to walk straight into a minefield, and reel you back. So figuring out the skill set of the client is number one, and then focus on what do you want to achieve. Because Fabric is all about agility, making things quickly. And there's another saying that says fail fast, and that's awesome, but how about not focusing on the fail side and focusing on the fast side, getting stuff done at a speed where you can sustain it and not just keep falling over and getting a bloody nose every 15 minutes.
And I think it's very important. And even if you're a junior, fresh, like don't know anything about Fabric or Power BI or anything, or if you're a senior with all these preconceptions that you have, if we come to an organization or a company where we're supposed to guide them into the world of Fabric, we have them all sit down and discuss definitions right away, because the seniors can learn the juniors what they need to know, but we can also mitigate the seniors' preconceptions and say, yes, this is how you have been doing data warehousing, and it's very good that you're teaching the juniors how to do it. But in the world of Fabric, we have to adjust this. So all of them get the same information at the same time, and they all get to realize that we have to think about things in a new way. Never think that everything you know from the past is applicable here. So it's kind of starting fresh from wherever you are experience-wise. You have to learn about storage in a new way. You have to learn about compute in a new way. Everything of the basics needs to be relearned. So that's a good start to get everything on the same page.
But I think to actually answer your question, which is not my forte, by the way, I'm awesome at going off on a tangent. Ooh, skrill. That is, we try to start small, because nobody in their right mind wants a data platform. And I will die on this hill. Nobody wants a data platform. Everybody wants the output of a data platform. And the faster that we could show value by doing the bare minimum to give someone these KPIs that they've been dying to see for the last, 2 years, that's awesome. But we need also to have the big picture. So this is where our experience and our expertise comes in. We can have an eye on the big picture while we sort of kind of release the client at figuring out how to do one specific thing. But that also means sort of kind of like raising a kid, or in my case, a new kitten. He's a domestic terrorist, by the way. You know where he's going, and you know that he will hurt himself in 5 minutes. So being where that's going to happen in 5 minutes or 1 or 2 steps ahead. That's how we found that we can make the most of Fabric without really pulling the pin, tossing the grenade, and running off.
But also adding to that, as we are trying to meet the client where they are, Fabric opens up a very good opportunity that they can use skills that they have no matter what that kind of skills are. Do they want to do the solution this way or that way or this way or with those pieces of the puzzle? They can use the skills that they have, whether it's Python or T-SQL or whatever it is, to use to build the solution that they can themselves own and continue maintaining. Because we don't want to come there and build a solution for them that they have to learn a new coding language or a new tool if they don't want to. So trying to know what they know today and try to accommodate that in a Fabric solution as well.
This sort of kind of segues into a cost discussion, because it is really, really easy to look at a number and go, okay, this is going to cost me X amount of dollars per month. But what does that actually mean? What does that word cost mean? If I were to tell you that I can build this Fabric environment and we can run it on an F8, let's just toss a number out there. It is going to be running entirely on notebooks. The Python will be so convoluted because it is optimized to here and everywhere. So just to make sure that I can eke out every millimeter of performance in everything. So I'm pushing the F8 to the limit, but we can get away with an F8. Or I say we're going to run this on an F16 or 32 because I'm doing most of the work in data flows. Data flows might be something that is easier for my client to deal with. It's going to be slower. It is going to be more expensive because it's not as performant as raw Python. But we're back to, where does cost lead us? What is the cost? And at the end of the day, it turns out that most projects, the people are going to cost you more than the tech. So it adds a whole new dynamic and dimension to the cost discussion, which I find to be really, really exciting.
Absolutely. I said that during one of my previous presentations. Do you want to pay for Fabric or do you want to pay for the people working in Fabric? Yeah. Like, you kind of have to figure out, and you're paying for something regardless. But how would you start teaching those who are not coming from our background, who are not coming from the IT side, who understands data modeling? How would you teach them how to use Fabric properly? Because we know that we have to do things in a certain way to get the most out of a box. But if you just, like you said, if you just hand them that grenade and just say, go ahead, one of the consequences could be that you have a business user who know just enough to take down the entire capacity. So how do you go about teaching them the fundamentals and how to start using Fabric kind of the right way without being dangerous to everyone else?
You want to start with this, Linda?
Yeah. I'm not even sure if I know how to use Fabric the right way. We all learn. But I can't remember the saying, but giving the least amount of access to start with and then level up is the way I would go. Like, giving them minimal amount of access that they need to do their job at this moment. If we can, as we go along, teach them more what they need to know, even if they think that they know everything. Teach them what that kind of things or choosing will lead to before we give them more access, so that we can step by step make it a more safe approach, I would say.
So I've been giving this a lot of thought because I'm a certified trainer. I teach people I've been doing that for many, many years on a lot of Microsoft technologies, and we're slowly moving into teaching people to do Fabric, both as a general courses and also as our own clients. And the more I look at it, the more I think it's going to start with, again, meeting you where you are. If you're a business user, that means that you understand the business process. My challenge is then to explain to you how to map that knowledge into Fabric, and what that knowledge, that experience, and those requirements that you have, what that means from a compute standpoint. That is going to be an interesting challenge, because not everybody takes to weird abbreviations like others do. So that's going to be an interesting experience. But at the same time, I would probably approach this the way that I learned to fly. So I flew gliders. I now fly single engine airplanes. And the best instructors that I had was, okay, here are the basics. This is what the stick does. This is what the rudder does. If you do this, you are going to fall from the sky. So let's try to avoid that. And then it was all, okay, you're flying. I'm here to keep you from killing yourself, but I am not here to keep you from needing new fresh underwear, because you are going to scare the living daylights out of you, and that is part of training. So I'm all about letting people figure out what happens if we inadvertently take down the capacity. And it's up to me to give them an environment where they can do this. There's yet another saying that says that everybody has a development environment. Just nobody, or not everybody, has a separate production environment. So you might not want to do this in production, but this is exactly what a training and dev environment is for.
Yep. We also got a comment from Anish, a very interesting and valid question about the actual cost and what it means. Something we can make as cheap and efficient as possible versus something the client might be able to take over and understand. And I would follow up on that as well and say, how can we turn this around, and instead of coming at it from our perspective as IT professionals who have been building data platforms, how can we use Fabric in a way that allows people to figure out what they want, to get them excited about that? How can we kind of take what they do and then kind of move that into a more structured way, a more proper data model, for example? What kind of potential do you see in Fabric as a platform or as a service in doing it that way, where we allow the users to go and do their thing, and then we help them make things better?
So I'm smiling because Catherine and I have been MVPs for longer than Linda has. So we were around when they first showed us the embryo that then turned into Fabric. And as Fabric started being a thing, I was my usual very angry white male self, because I could not for the life of me really figure out who was this crap for. It doesn't work. It is slow. It is expensive. And who is it for? And I had some invaluable conversations with Catherine, who really turned things around and said, no, don't look at it from your old perspective. So I was absolutely coming with my preconceptions. I was only looking at it from, this is how we've done stuff for the last 20 years on-prem and in the cloud. And it turns out that was not the way to look at it. So a bit of a long story to come to your question. I think that is the way to do it. Letting them loose, doing their thing, and then coming in and going, okay, you've done this. That will have these consequences because, and then move up down the stack. And we also need to remember that it's not static. BI stuff tended, I should say, to be static. We set things up and then it just churned on for years and years and years. I envision stuff in Fabric being much more about or akin to prototyping. We have a specific thing we need to solve. We quickly whip it up with as much duct tape and pieces of string that you need, get it to work, and then we come back and we productionalize it or enterprise it or whatever you want to call it. And I think that's where the user comes in, a business user. They whip something up and go, this is what we want. And then someone with more experience goes in and, okay, let's rebuild it together to get it to perform and to get it to work in a better way.
Yeah, in a short answer, I think Fabric is a very good proof of concept area, playground area, and just like you're saying, when they have failed fast and kind of also learned from it, but also know what they want, we can build it properly. So it's a very good area for that. I'm gonna stick out my nose here, chin, what's it called? Something? Neck. Stick
This
out
part.
and say that I think it's also good to remember that even if Fabric is a very good product, it is a SaaS product, it doesn't fit everyone. We had a conversation just yesterday with one of our clients, and they wanted to move to Fabric, and we kind of said that you don't really have a purpose to do that. Don't just go there because of the fun of it or it's the new cool thing. Go there when you actually see a reason or a purpose. If, from my point of view, I think it's the newly fresh projects, the people just starting with BI or the organizations. It's a great place for that if you don't have data in 10 different ways already. But if you have an on-prem database and you have a data lake somewhere, and then you're also starting up with Fabric, well, that might just be spreading all your things everywhere. So Fabric is great, but you don't have to go there if you don't have the need. You can do all that proof of concept in Fabric, but have your whole solution built somewhere else as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tool. It's not the tool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that all comes back to what you said as well about governance. You're enabling people to do their work more efficiently, to get those insights, get that value, but you just kind of have to figure out how to lock it down and make it safe for them.
No, and we've all heard, I can't remember the exact wording, but it was something like, and this was Amir Nets, 5 seconds to set up, 5 minutes to wow, right? And I'm going to add 5 months to clean up if someone really goes to town and does a lot of things. And here's the thing. People think that I'm sarcastic and think that, well, that's just shows you how crappy Fabric is. No, they could not be more wrong. Because if this means that I need to go in and clean up after someone who would otherwise never have been able to achieve what they achieved, that would be a net loss for the world, in my opinion. This is enabling people who would otherwise never have the chance to do things, to do amazing things. It will mean that someone like me will need to come in and clean up from time to time. And I could not be happier, because it's not about me. It's not about the tech. It's about what you do with it. And that's how we really push the boundaries and really get value out of all this data we've been hoarding since the late 50s.
But is it really a mess if you get business value out of it?
And we're back to cost again. And of course, the answer is no. And thank you for making that point, because going back to governance, we have a very specific way of doing things. It should be done this way. And there are a few people that I respect more, and then, to be fair, fear more than Matthew Roche. And I can just see him poking over my shoulder whenever I try to set up the implementation framework. That yes, you can do it that way, but just the same. Let me rephrase that. Just like Linda said, there are many ways to do things in Fabric. It also applies to governance. As long as you know what you're trying to achieve, that is way more important than exactly how you achieve it. We're back to the why is always going to be more important than the exact how. So mess, maybe not.
But that is also a question of business value can be very hard to actually put a number on. Like what is this business value worth? Is that mess and cost really making up for that business value that you're getting? Or could you get that mess cheaper? So the business value doesn't hurt as much. So it's always it depends. We
Of course,
had
you
to
had
get it in
the
there.
it depends card.
Absolutely. Let me ask you a completely different question. I can start with you, Linda. What is the number one feature in Fabric that you see people don't use as much as they maybe could or should have?
A data activator.
Yeah.
Coming from a Power BI perspective, everyone wanted to use Power BI with Power Apps and getting that alerts and all of the goody things that you could combine there. And then Microsoft built this awesome thing with Data Activator. And it might be me, but I have not seen many people using it at all. And it is a good tooling that we could utilize a hell of a lot more than we're doing. So yeah.
Good answer. Can you beat that, Alexander?
No, and I'm not even going to try. But what I will say, the main blocker I see for Data Activator is the cost aspect. It is. I don't think they've really figured out how to handle the CUs and the cost stuff. So it's a bit of a black box at the moment. But I was going to say Data Activator because I think it is the coolest thing since sliced bread. But I'm going to do two things. And one is Python. I think it is a wonderful language that very much complements SQL. And there, for some reason, there's this divide between SQL and Python. Never do they meet. I think that's going to change very, very quickly. I know for a fact that you've jumped in with both feet into Python and finds it to be a delightful language. And it really complements the SQL in Fabric. So by all means, learn some Python. You don't need to be a guru at it. Just learn some Python because that's going to give you superpowers essentially. And the other part is one thing that nobody talks about. And if it is spoken about, it is spoken about quietly in the back of shady bars, because it's one of these things that everybody knows is awesome, but they wouldn't want to be caught dead using it. Visual calculations, in my opinion, is the best tool to learn to write DAX. The purists did just jump on and go, no, you shouldn't do that because it's going to hurt your ability to write proper DAX. Yeah, no, not going to say what I just thought, but I don't agree with that statement. I'll put it that way. It's a fantastic way of giving you, again, what you need when you need it. I'd much rather do visual calculations, which may or may not be the proper way of doing it. If I can get a value that I need now, instead of learning all about contract text transitions, that's going to drive me crazy and maybe have a value that may or may not be correct in 6 months' time. So those are my two favorite things.
I would very proudly use visual calculations, mostly because it has functions that DAX regularly don't have. So I hope that you're wrong in the assumption that people shy away from it or doesn't want to use it because it's not the real thing, because it has abilities that just isn't possible otherwise.
Cool.
We don't always agree.
But isn't that the best way to kind of learn and have those discussions? And
It is.
Yeah, and I cannot stress enough how fantastic it is to work with Linda. Because we have completely different viewpoints on a lot of things. We have completely different experiences. And I don't think I've ever been in a professional setting where I get challenged so much by her not having the same experiences that I do. My preconceptions get challenged every day, and I am much, much better for it. So we are definitely completing and lifting each other up in that aspect.
Yeah, and I'm learning a lot from him, and not just about tech, but also about airplanes.
But that kind of, I would say that's good advice for anyone coming into Fabric as well, to have those teams that are not just an IT team or not just a business team, but to actually, and to the whole point of Fabric, breaking down those walls and silos and getting together and working together. That is when you can kind of see that exponential growth, I would say. Yeah, you're a good example of that. Yeah. I think this has been a really great discussion, and looking at fundamentals, they matter because of the cost side of things, performance, just understanding the business even more. But for someone who is maybe coming from, let's take it from the technical side of things. The main thing that they should focus on going into Fabric, if we look at this fundamentals, like takeaway from your side of things, what is the key thing for them to look into to kind of get it right when they start a Fabric project?
I'm going to jump in first. And first, with the qualification, it depends on what your skill set is. Because one of the biggest enablers and also biggest challenges that I see with Fabric is that it's labeled as one thing, but it's really not. You cannot be one person running everything, because you cannot be a data scientist, a data engineer, a data activator, whatever that is, a report person. You just can't. You cannot master all those things. But if we say that you come in as a data analyst, I would argue that your absolutely super fundamental thing should be proper dimension modeling, because everything is based off that. If you screw that up, nothing else matters. Everything will be bad. You just cannot code your way out of that. If you come in as a data engineer, you absolutely need to understand how data flows. And that is vastly different from running stuff on-prem or probably anywhere else. So figuring out how to move data from point A to point B and what that really means, it's going to be a huge undertaking to understand that, but it's also going to unlock your understanding and ability to apply that knowledge to do proper data engineering. Then it doesn't matter if you do it in data flows or Python or SQL, or if you write your own functions. That's beside the point. Just figuring out how data needs to move and how it can move between components. That is the really basic stuff.
Can I add one thing to that?
Please.
I think it's also very important to know when not to move data in Fabric, right?
In the words of Marco Russo, I met him in Stockholm at FabCon. We were the night before I was going to do my session, and I showed him parts of it, and he said that the best DAX is the DAX you don't write. And I would argue that the best data copy is the data copy you didn't have to do. Hello, One Lake. So, yes, absolutely. Thank you for that addition.
Yeah. Linda?
This is where Linda says her thing.
Yeah. Yes, no, I think I interrupted you.
No, I didn't really have anything to add. I just want to also mention it's a good thing that you didn't have to write any DAX then.
Yes. In my case, it is a very, very good thing. Yeah.
Yes. I am glad I have coworkers who are much better than me in DAX.
That's one of the reasons I have Linda.
Yep.
Mhm.
All right. I think we can probably wrap it up here today, unless there is something else that you want to add. Cool things in Fabric or upcoming things that people should, I don't know, attend, watch, look at, anything you want to share.
I want to share that we at Analytics Masterminds always look for talented people. So, I mean, just send us an email if you want to have another job in the future.
That's a good point. And you cannot go wrong with community. I have this job because of community. Linda has this job because of community. There's so many people that I've talked to that really realized that community was the enabler for their careers. So
yeah, and you don't have to know it all. You have to
No.
know someone that knows the stuff that you don't know.
Exactly. You don't hire me because I know everything. You hire me because I know everyone. And speaking of community, there's this fantastic Fabric event in February, despite
Yes.
it being in Oslo in February. And if you haven't experienced Oslo in February, you're going to redefine the word cold.
Yes, bring a hat, I think is the key takeaway. But the whole point is that in February, it's so cold that you want to just stay inside and hang out with all the cool people, the speakers, fellow attendees.
There's a
sponsors.
strategy behind this.
There is. Like, we're going to hang out in this really nice and warm and cozy movie theater. By the way, they have like deluxe seats in this place with like heating in the seats, so you can recline and put on the heating. Yes. So we have thought this through.
As a speaker, I'm not sure I like this.
Only a few though, just a select couple of seats in each room. So you have to be early if you want those fancy seats. But yes, community Fabric February. It's a great place to just get your ticket, come and have a chat, learn from the other attendees. I mean, the three of us just today, I have learned a ton from listening to you sharing your insights and thoughts on Fabric and projects. And if you want more of that, Fabric February is the place to go. And there will be snacks, and you will bring something that will make people go if they are not used to it, and something that everyone will love, probably.
We promise. Yes.
Yes. Awesome. All right. Alexander, Linda, thank you so much for having this conversation and joining me today for this live stream. I know our attendees are going to love this conversation as well. And if they do want to follow up with you, Fabric February, but you're also probably available on LinkedIn and social media and through Data Masterminds as well. So we can probably, let me put that back up. Here we go, datamasterminds.com. If you want a new job or just continue the conversation with Alexander and Linda, go and check that out. And with that, I think we can probably just do the awkward goodbye wave and say have a lovely, and there you go. Have a lovely rest of your day. Thank you so much. And to everyone watching as well. See you in February.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.